Okay, in this example what I wanted to do was I wanted to show how you assault a position in hex command Gunpowder, especially with the 54mm figures that we've got on the game table right now. This has kind of been a frequent issue, not just with hex command Gunpowder, but all wargaming rules, essentially. So one of the caveats to remember is that whenever you assault a position, in this case the Union position back there on that ridge, the issues that come up are things like, well, you can frontally assault it, of course, but without softening up the target with casualties and some kind of other distress to it, it's always going to be difficult. And especially over here, because as we treat anybody who's on higher ground, they're treated as being in a type of cover because they have some benefit. So they're in a beneficial way than the opponent who might be on lower ground, in this case coming up this, what appears to be Death Valley. So these guys are in cover already, and they always will be until combat occurs to them from a similar or higher terrain. In this case, it won't be until the opponents get up, into these other surrounding ridges. So they're really faced with the idea of assaulting, and this is kind of typical for the Confederates and all the times that they attack the Union. Well, you have to assault frontally, but you never want to. You always want to flank them. But in this case, the only way to flank the position is to go off the edge of the world, which is that way, and then come around, I guess you could say. We'll come around this, and then this farm right here on this hill, and then assault them from the flank there. And here the other situation is another ridge where you have to get over this bridge, get up through these trees onto this hill area, and then, assault the position or fire at the position from this area. So, again, not exactly a super situation, but, these things happen. In this case, well, commander says attack, so they're going to attack. And how you do that? Well, obviously in the sequence of events you roll to see who's going to go first. And in this particular case, let's just assume that the Union has one activation. They're going to go first, and they've done all their other movement that they wish to do, and then the non-phasing player, which would be the Confederates here, would be able to fire. Now, if they had artillery, which they don't at this moment, they would fire if the target was within range and they could see it. So, actually, let's get this tree out of the way. That's just decoration anyway. So they would soften the target up by being able to shoot if they had artillery or weapons that could reach that fire. In this case, it's only artillery. And again, with the 54mm figures, it's a deceiving kind of thing. It looks like they're close enough to have combat. In this case, they're not. So let's just assume that the Confederates have nothing to shoot, and so the Union now, in the process of the turn now, gets to shoot. So we'll fire that cannon, and the way it's done is simple. You simply count up the ranges. For artillery, the first two hexes are the automatic hit range. So the neighboring hex, and then the first hex after that would be an automatic hit. So the next range band would be two more hexes, so that is color. And then the next two hexes would be this one under here, and then this one here, so that's code. And then anything beyond that would be code and color on our code and color dice, which you've seen before, which are these. So we'll roll. We need to roll a red star, which is what we call code and color. So we'll roll see if they can cause a hit to a Confederate unit, and sure enough, they don't. That's just code. So they needed code and color. So no damage was incurred. Now, so the Confederate units can now activate. It's now the Confederates' turn. They become the phasing player, so they're going to move their guys, and they're going to move across the bridge. The bridge doesn't cost anything, so it's 1, 2, 3 for infantry units, and the second unit will just place right on top of the bridge. The third unit's 1, 2, 3 right in the line. So that's all they can do, and now they're going to the non-phasing player is Union. They're going to shoot, and again the artillery fires. In this case, the range is closer, so here's again automatic, and then color takes that first unit. So we'll look for a red. And they got it. So they got a hit, and we'll put a red hit indicator down on the unit. The infantry next to them will fire, and in this case it's musketry, so it's every hex is a band, with the first one being automatic. Second is going to be, or the first hex beyond the initial hex, is going to be color, code, and then code and color, but they're rifled muskets, so they get an extra range, extra hex. So again, it's a code and color for the infantry firing. And they didn't get it, so there's no damage, there's no hit there. So now the Confederates will shoot. They shoot with the damage not included because it's a simultaneous, so they'll shoot automatic, color, code, and code and color. And because they're on a hill, they are again not able to do it. So let's go again, and we'll roll for initiative. We'll just roll here to see what happens. Red will be Confederates, blue will be Union, and red's Confederates. So the Confederates are going to move first, and they can move 3 spaces. So here we have a situation where we can decide what the Confederate player is going to do here. He can move obliquely this direction, overcoming this stone wall obstacle, and letting the other units filter in this area. And because he's got a hit, we kind of like, well, maybe he doesn't want to get shot again. So we'll go ahead and do that, just out of curiosity. We'll take him over the stone wall, behind this hill, which puts him in cover, obscurity completely, so he cannot be shot. But, on the other hand, because he's encountered a terrain element, he's going to get a terrain indicator. So we put a green indicator down for that. So the next unit in this sequence of moving happens. He can move 3. What he will do is, we'll do 1, 2, and stop right there. The next one moves 1, 2, 3, and so both those units are now able to combat the Union troops. The other unit back here, 1, 2, 3, doesn't need to change his facing yet, so he doesn't need to incur any kind of movement penalty. So he's good to go. Now I should say here that sometimes you can play the game without a movement penalty. It doesn't really matter. It depends how much detail you want to put into the game, but technically speaking, anytime you make a facing change, it should cost 1 movement point, but it's not necessary. So they've done their moving, and the Union's now going to fire. Here we are again. Automatic for the artillery, and then color right here. So he needs to roll red to cause a casualty. He doesn't, he rolled blue. The Union infantry is firing, automatic, color, code, and code and color could be either one of these two. But here is the situation we talked about ganging up. It would not be allowed for these 2 units to pick on this unit because there's another unit right here in the same range band. Automatic, color, code, code and color, code and color. So because he fired here, we don't allow another unit to gang up. There are optional rules, of course. If there was a commander present, he could insist or enable them to fire by rolling on his tactical value to gang up on these guys. But there's no commander present, and that's an optional rule anyway. So we'll fire here. As we know, it's automatic, color, code, code and color. So we're looking for red star. And doesn't get it. Okay, so now that was non-phasing player shooting. This is the phasing player shooting. He has 2 units to shoot. 1 at the artillery, which is going to be again automatic, color, code, and code and color because he's on the hill, undercover. So that's a miss. And the next unit here is going to fire. Automatic, color, code, code and color. So he's not allowed to at least cause any casualties. Of course, he would if a commander was present here, and we just neglected to show that a commander could have been placed here. So without the commander, there's no bonuses, and that's another element. The fact that you can assault a position getting as many bonuses as you can by putting a commander in place. So we'll just show that as an example. At the end of the movement, we've placed our commander there to give the units that are in his proximity a bonus. Now there's, again, another optional rule. You can apply the commander's sphere of influence to all the units around him, or just to one unit in particular. In this case, we will apply to all the units in his proximity. So we can try again. Just imagine that we didn't do that combat. Again, it would be automatic color code, because they're on a hill, code and color. But because of the commander presence, it goes back to code. So you bring it down one, that's like a bonus. So we're looking for star, and we don't get it. The next unit fires at this unit over here, automatic color code, code and color, and that means it's impossible normally because they're in cover. But with the commander, it goes back to code and color possibility. So again, we're looking for a red star, we don't get it. So even you can see with those bonuses, it's not that easy to assault this position. So now, with their activation ended, the Union player would then activate any movement he had, applying commanders where he wants, and so on. And then the non-phasing player, which now becomes the Confederate, would be able to shoot. So we'll shoot him again, and here we are in another optional rule. It's called consecutive fire. It's the second time that this particular unit has engaged this unit up there. So we're going to get a bonus for that, which means automatic color code, code and color because of the cover, goes back to code because of the presence of the commander, and the consecutive fire brings it back to color. So we go just down one from where we were before. A benefit of a better chance to hit. So we're at now color. And actually, here we didn't get it. The same thing applies to this one. Whereas before it was code and color, now it's going to go back to code. So he needs a star to cause a hit because of consecutive firing. And again, the Confederates are just missing. They're just bad die rolls. So that is essentially a couple of turns that gives an idea of what can happen. But essentially you get the idea of how you push and pull that code and color dice system. So that was non-phasing shooting. Now the phasing player, the Union that one activation, is going to shoot again. We already know it's an automatic hit on these guys. Well, they're going to get hit. It's automatic. So we flip it over, number 2. These guys are going to rout if something isn't done. Now, remember the commander? Even though it's an automatic hit, we still roll to see if that commander was killed. That's a red star. Well, that's what you call fate, my friends. General is dead. So the general dies. In this case, we do not apply the hit. General dies instead. So that's basically it. And now it'll be the Confederates' chance to activate. Well, remove that commander. That could have an effect in the game, but not at this moment. So we'll move the Confederate units. And in this case, this guy has not done anything for one turn, so his fatigue indicator comes off. The commander was there for a turn, which took away this hit. We forgot that process about rally up before he died. And so therefore, this relatively now unhurt unit moves up the hill. Make that clear about where that house was. Actually, no, it wasn't there. It was right here. So these guys move up the hill to engage. That's 1, 2 for moving up the hill. They also get their fatigue indicator back because they went up the hill. And 1, 2, and 3. Actually, they don't want to be in automatic hit range because they would if the artillery would fire on them, so they're not going to move too far. They're going to stay right there and take their chances with the die. These guys can move 3, but do they want to do that? Well, perhaps not. With that hit on them, maybe we don't want to move into that automatic hit. We'll just fire at this artillery. Well, we got these 2 units here. Let's move this guy up in here. 1, 2, 3. Move him up there. And that'll take a fatigue hit, if you will, as well. Put the tree back. let's use a different tree. It's good to have these loose trees so we can show that these guys are in a forest. Alright. So these guys are in the forest there. And this other unit now changes facing. We were using that optional roll, so we'll keep it. So it's down to 2, moves 1, and then 2. So we're looking here at a brigade of infantry facing only 1 battery and 1 infantry regiment defending. Well, as we said before, the non-phasing player, which is now the Union, gets to shoot. Nothing is in automatic range, so he has to decide. These are all equal in their range. He has to choose which one he wants to shoot. This one here, in this case, he is not prevented from selecting. So he'll choose the one that's already damaged. He needs automatic color, which goes back to automatic because he's already fired at them. So that goes to a level 2. The infantry here is going to fire automatic color code. Goes to code and color because of the red hit indicator. But consecutive firing, nope, that's a brand new unit. It's not the same unit. The unit that it fired at before has moved into these trees. So it's not the same. Even if they were to fire at the same unit, it doesn't matter because they've now moved. If they had been stationary and stayed there, they would get the bonus, but they don't. So again, automatic color code. Code and color because of the hit. See how good they... Oh, you know what? I'm going to keep that. That was a drunk, but I grabbed it by mistake. It should not. I should not have grabbed it. That's a good hit. Lucky for them. So a hit on the Confederates. Okay. Brigade fires back. Again. Automatic. Color code. No other modifiers in play. This unit here needs to roll any star. And it does. Now we get to the situation where the firepower is going to be just too much for those units and probably one of them is going to break. But we'll see. They don't have a general, remember, he's gone. Automatic color code goes to code and color because of the cover. But it goes to impossible because of the hit. And impossible again because of the second hit. So because these guys are so badly damaged, they really can't shoot up that hill. So they pretty much are unable to shoot. But these guys aren't so bad off. Automatic color code goes to code and color because they're in cover. But it goes to impossible because they've got a hit as well. So again, these guys can't do as well. These guys are up on the hill. They're going to fire with no problem. They can choose any target. Automatic from here. Color code. They're not in cover because it's the same level. So they're looking for code. And they didn't get it. So that's the end of that firing round. So here what we've done is we've simulated the fact that a small unit can actually hold out against a far greater numerical army, which was documented on countless occasions. And that seems to be holding true. Not only are they holding out, but they're causing considerable damage as well. So let's carry this to the inevitable conclusion. Let's roll for initiative. Red is Confederate. Confederates will go first. Let's assume they move. 1, 2, that's a melee. These guys are not going to engage, but they will move up the hill. 1, 2, 3. And take a fatigue indicator. These guys are going to join that melee. 1, 2 right there with their hit indicator. And in order to make some attempt to cover all that, these guys are going to stay where they are and shoot this infantry unit there. So there's a melee going on between these two units and that artillery battery. But The fact of the matter is, even though we would like to see that artillery battery have some attempt to fight, they don't. Crews do not fight in this game because it's rare that they actually did anything. And I know Gettysburg is one example of where crews were able to fight off, but that was under different circumstances, not that dissimilar from this, but dissimilar enough that this is another instance where the gunners just have no capability of withholding, especially a sizable enemy that's not badly damaged. This guy's fresh, this one's only got one hit on it. So crews do not fight. What happens is they run. Do they get to run with their artillery gun? That's an optional rule. For the most part, we will have to look that up, but the fact is that it is possible that the crews, in seeing this impending doom, would limber up and run. That is a commander element. Even though there's no commander there, the troops still have a capability of doing so, limbering up and moving. But we would probably still have to roll on the commander value for a tactical to see if they could do that. If the commander was present, it'd be easier, but without his presence, it's up to the unit itself to roll on that value. At a +1, actually, to be accurate. So if the commander's value was a 6, it would go to a 7 on a D10, you roll a D10, and if they roll higher, they pass, they can limber up and run. However, we don't often do that because we like to see the capturing of the guns. So don't make it too easy. So, because the crew has run away, there is no crew there to resist. So, who would be able to get up there without any great penalty? And it would be these guys here. They moved 1, 2, and then 3. They enter this hex. They can't use the guns just yet, but that does put them in now in proximity, neighboring hex, to melee these units, which means the firing that was going to happen here is no longer possible. Now we have a melee. Had the Confederate player understood this, if I had described it that way, and if it had been known, would he have, that the crew was not going to melee, would he have moved there or would he have moved here? Well, we can guess maybe if he had known that, he would have moved here to engage that in melee with this unit engaging in melee here. So either way, the demonstration shows the parameters, the things you have to be aware of. So let's take this as a rail melee. These two units are going to melee that regiment right there. So in looking at these units meleeing, the value for this infantry unit is undamaged. It's a value 3. This Union Zouave unit is a value 3 as well. It's under no cover, and it has a hit. So it's a value 2. It's also facing another unit on the ground below it at a value of 2, but it's also, in comparison to this, a value of 1, because these guys are now in cover compared to this unit here on the ground, on the lower level. But we'll take this one melee at a time. That's a way that the game was designed, but again, there's an optional rule that lets it all be done at once, just like in a board game. You total up their values and then you roll, and whatever happens affects them both or affects whomever, but it could affect them both. In this case, we'll stick with the basic system, which is one unit meleeing the other, and then so on, for each one involved. So a 3 on the Confederate value versus 2 is a difference of 1, which makes the Confederate unit the stronger unit. And we'll roll for the Confederates. They roll a red. And for the Union, they roll a red star. Actually, in this particular case, we're only looking for red or blue. The red star only means a commander might have been killed. So in this case, they both roll red. So according to the rules, Both units roll red. They both get a hit, and the weaker gets also a fatigue indicator. So the Zouave unit gets fatigue indicator, goes to a level 2 on its hit indicator, and the Confederate unit goes to a level 1 on its hit indicator. Next, melee unit. Confederates are a value 3, which goes to 2. The Union is a value 2, which goes to 3 because it's in cover. So that is now the stronger versus this one. So we'll roll for the Union. He rolls a blue. And the Confederates also roll a blue. If both units roll blue, the weaker, this unit here, gets a fatigue hit. Now that's interesting, because you would have thought that it would get a hit indicator. Well, this is where the blue comes in. Blue is kind of like a non-volatile hit. Doesn't really signify damage, but a gradual damage is going to be caused now. So, in lieu of all this, that phase is concluded. We'll roll for initiative again to see who gets to move. Let's assume the Confederates, the Confederates get to move first. In this particular case, without other help coming for that Union regiment, it frees up this unit that's over here in the forest to advance, but it doesn't want to go into the zone right here, because if this unit was undamaged, they would have to stop. As it happens, the unit is damaged, which enables this unit to move into here, but also move up 1. Unfortunately, it doesn't have the speed. So there's 1 there, 2, and that's as far as it can go. So they've joined the melee. So there is now 3 units meleeing that Zouave unit on the hill. And it's probably not going to survive. So, curiosity again. Let's roll for the Confederates. Value 3 goes to 2 because it's got a hit indicator on it. And a value 3 down 2 goes to 1. The Confederates roll, and they roll blue, even though it's a blue star. The Union regiment rolls, and it rolls a red. So in that particular case, the unit that rolls a red causes a hit on the stronger unit. This unit meleeing, value 3 goes to 2 because of the hit indicator. The benefit of being in cover now goes away. So it's 2 to 1 for the Confederates' favor, and they roll. The Confederates roll. They roll blue. Union rolls. They roll red. They cause a hit. So this, according to the rules, this regiment is actually holding out. The other unit engages. They are a value 3. The Union regiment's down to a value of 1. So rolling for the Confederates, they roll blue. And rolling for the Union, they roll blue as well. If the blue is rolled by... They both roll blue, the weaker gets a TE hit. So a terrain effects hit caused on the weaker. And no hit on the stronger. It's interesting the way this develops. Again, we'll go to the next round automatically, assuming that all the turns, all the movements have happened. We'll just roll here. The values are equal. They're both at a value 1. They both roll. Confederates roll red. Union rolls red. So they both get a red. They both cause a hit. They both rout. So in this case, we are seeing the Union regiments routing 1, 2, 3 back out of camera view, giving it a yellow indicator. The Confederate unit here routes 1, 2, 3. We'll give that a yellow indicator as well. And now we're faced with the situation of not knowing what to do here. Which of these surviving units will advance? We don't know. We'll just roll randomly to see which. Red here, blue here. So this blue one moves up to assume the position of the former Union regiment.